Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the first reading for The Mouse Says the Butler Didn't Do It, a mystery series written in the pen name of Cheryl Ann Butler by Nico Scher. This is our opening story of A New Hope Thanksgiving, a mystery. Prologue. December 26th found the 9 o'clock Thursday morning at the employees' meeting of the Crystal Heart Lodge Inn Bed and Breakfast. It was cut short by a phone call placed by the old New Hope Salisbury High School Lions football team's running back. A member of the class of men of the Mandula graduating class from 1980 through 1984. Silver Bear NP made the call to his quarterback and best friend of over 50 years, Chris Calhoun. Yes, you heard exactly what the hell I just said. Storm has been dropped off in an apartment parking lot in Morrisville. Silver growled over the speaker of the phone. Does that girl have any friggin' brains left that she was born with? Or did the last one cease to freaking exist when she got herself engaged to the illegitimate idiot son of Donald Von Torp? It's freaking pouring out there. We're at the fucking end of a tropical storm. Chris spun as he saw his youngest son, 32-year-old Graham, bolt out of the chair of the housekeeping management office. The position belonged to him, that of his son, as he stepped around the large dog that laid on the floor of the inn. They were now having a ghost hitchhiker situation. We got one of those up here, even though that kid ain't been seen since before COVID. Graham! Ethel, Chris's wife, Graham's mother, and the president and manager of the inn stood. Now you two have done it. She followed their son as he slammed out of the office door. Graham, I know where you're heading. Be careful, please, and take Beastly with you. I don't need Aunt Bet to find that car of yours wrapped around a tree in Washington's Crossing State Park, or your older brother to be on patrol and discover it over one-lane bridge submerged in the damn canal. Graham pulled up short. He threw his waist-length hair over his shoulder, then turned to face her. Mom, he's disabled because of those idiot parents of his. He was supposed to be brought to the door, and she chicken shitted out. Her boyfriend's rep means more than what she was assigned to do, and that was to protect a teenager with physical issues from the shithead he's already been fucking through enough with, this freaking bastard of a father of his. I don't give a damn that the SOB she's engaged to lived in Chevy Chase, Maryland, and now he's in a $1 million house in State College, a stone's throw from Penn State, and can buy freaking 3/4 of Hyannisport and the whole Chappaquiddick Island with his pocket change. Her ass made a deal with Mandula through Iceberg and his ladies, and now she's dumped him? Not even on River Road, but in the aftermath of a tropical fucking storm and the pouring down torrential rain. For Christ's sake! He threw his hand out to slam it on the reception desktop, causing the antique register book to juggle and the inkwell to topple. Thank God that's empty, or Theo would have you sanding that ink out for hours. She took a breath. Graham, I know it's raining. You think, Mom? And this is the Queen's, Ranella Papadopoulos's, fuck the Carlson's last name, her only grandchild, a grandson who never should have been taken from the only home he ever should have been raised in. He grabbed his full-length leather trench coat to pull on. Mom, I drive a Porsche. It handles a hell of a lot better than Dad's 64 and a half Mustang or Chrissy's 69 Dodge Daytona ever will in the rain. It don't dance. I won't wind up in the drink like they did. Call the coven. Say prayers, I or one of the posse kids of Mandula find him before Reed does. 'Cause I get him back. Because he gets him back, Mandula's won't have enough money to bail me out of jail after I'm done with his ass, if they ever find the body. Not with what he's done in my life because of them. Graham took his keys from the hook behind the reception desk. He came around to the front door of the 300-year-old plus mansion and former roadside travelers inn, renovated into a bed and breakfast. I'll be safe, Mom. I got an angel, remember? Her name is Ranny. She hasn't left me since the day I was born, and I heard her cry of arrival when she demanded I get my shit together and deal with life on January 11th, all those years ago, under the footbridge that led to an almost 350-year-old Quaker church. And yeah, I saw New Hope's hitchhiker that day. They, with a little girl, gave me the strength to hold on. He kissed her cheek. Come on, Beastly. She brushed his long hair behind his ear to reveal a dangling silver cross over a pentagram in front of a Star of David, the earring he wore in his right ear. She brushed her fingers down his full beard that hid several scars from the horrible 4 days of him being missing, when he was just 17, and looked into his forest green eyes of the man he'd become. Her thoughts went to the stabbing he'd sustained to protect his pregnant sister 16 years ago. He was out the door with the dog, down the flagstone steps, and running for the 2000 Porsche Boxster X convertible, parked at the side of the lot of the inn. Diana and Lucifer, and you up there. Keep them both safe. And Beastly, protect them. She whispered a prayer as Chris approached her from behind. We raised him. But damn, when it comes to Storm and Reed, he's his mother's child. Thank you for raising our son with me. He wrapped his arms around her as the power that was within him seeped into herself. She looked over her shoulder at her husband of 43 years. I love you, Judeo-Christian Constantine Connolly Calhoun. Don't you ever forget that. I love you as much as our queen did. I won't, I promise you that. Let's just make sure we got enough bail money if he tangles with Reed. 'Cause this time, Georgie Porgy's son won't be able to lay his hands on a fucking butcher knife that I was stupid enough to leave in the kitchen sink, rinsing from prepping a dinner. Fuck me. When Iceberg finds out about the way she fucked this up after he was entrusted with Storm's life from Silver and me, Marine brethren or not, Silver and I are going to dance with him. Ice said she and her mother could be trusted to do this right. Strike one was him not being brought to Silver first off the bat like her mother was told to ensure. Strike two was him being placed with Reed by that ass of a caseworker who was brought and paid for, and now is under investigation. Bottom of the ninth, 2 outs, and she screws up because Thurston W. has pulled something, and she didn't even call. His ass has his father's secretary make the call. When we're told there's a foul ball on them by dumping him in Morrisville on a rain-swept day because the lover boy can't deal with it, and his drug-head big brother needs a fix and sells a teenage kid down the river to his fucking dealer. When she was ordered to bring him here. That's strike three. Game over, and now the dugout is cleared, and our Graham is rushing the mound, and the brawl is going to be on. Ice is going to blow a gasket when Silver and I finish ripping into him about trusting this to those two, when he knows how fucked up Miss Yardley Queen of the cheerleading squad of the Red Hawks is, and her daughter followed in her footsteps. Looks like stupidity has been passed on through the female side of that family, and her father, Dr. Lowell, isn't not to blame. Chris cut the girl a break. You know she has brains. Iceberg, Twinkle, and the aunties raised her right, even if her mother didn't. She was straight A's throughout school, valedictorian of her class, and is on a full scholarship to Penn State. She works 2 jobs and carries a higher than 4.0 average. Something has had to have happened. Something is not right. Something went terribly wrong. She would not defy the Iceman or his Twinkle, and you know it. And she takes care of both those other children her mother had and is raising them on her own. She turned in his arms to lay a hand against his chest. Effie's right, Chris. Something ain't right with this situation. 10-1 is Von Torp, and that bastard has, I and Maggie have been working on things. He's hit her on several occasions when she said something to correct him, and her mother has just left it happen. He's also backhanded Buddy and the girl who has disabilities when the kiddos have tried to protect their sister. Darkness filled their quarterback's ice crystal blue eyes. He looked over at his former left tackle, who leaned against the wall dividing the dining hall and the entrance hallway's reception area of the inn. May the gods help us all. Lieutenant Right Reverend Father John Pales blessed himself, then folded his arms across his chest. Amen, brother. Chris and Ethel spoke together. Chapter 1. Storm Dokkan shuffled along Route 32, or River Road, just north of Washington Crossing State Park in Pennsylvania, on the historical Pennsylvania Canal towpath. The November air was clear and crisp, its sky a cloudless bright blue, as the autumn storm of the night before had passed. The last of the colored leaves that had been brought down by the light wind crunched under his damp Orthodoxland special shoes. A few leaves, now turned brown, clung to the last of life here and there about the forest and woods of the area. His jeans' hem were darkened to black from what once was deep blue, caused by the depth of the dying grasses along the wooded lane. the Vietnam-era U.S. Army jacket of a decorated green beret that held his great-grandfather's badges, ribbons, and medals was his prized possession and clung to his thin shoulders. He was proud of several of his mending works he'd done to fix some seams that had opened, and there was one spot, a stain, that never came out. He wondered if it was blood from a long-ago firefight, but had no idea of the origin to it. Though patched and worn, now it hardly kept him warm. The white turtleneck he purchased at the thrift store had turned gray and with weekly washing in a pot of hot water over an open fire, and was worn under the black V-neck sweater bought at the same store a few days before the tropical storm came up the East Coast in late September. Between his backpack and the Army duffel bags, scavenged from a dumpster, he carried all his worldly possessions. Storm's long, curly mahogany hair was twisted and knotted into dreadlocks and stuck out in all directions to stand on end and around his head in a diameter of 2 feet to each side, and the same on the top of his head, as it was held by a thick black Harley-Davidson bandana tied in a do-rag style and pinned into place with several old-fashioned bobby pins. He'd worn his hair this way since age 5, and he would never allow it to be cut. There were multiple fights over it until his mother, Kathy, gave up. His right arm was held tight to his chest in a sling. The injury of the broken wrist, fractured forearm, and dislocated shoulder was set at the emergency room in a Bristol hospital. There he'd taken advantage of a code blue call that had the staff scrambling to slip away with the help of a young woman he'd known on and off for all of his life. He pushed his sunglasses up on his forehead to wipe the droplets of sweat from his pale green eyes, then smiled at the changing colors of the remainder of leaves on the trees. Not many left. Thanksgiving's coming soon. He started to whistle to himself an old tune he kind of remembered his angel singing, entitled Autumn Comes. As far as he could find on the song, it was an English folk song from the late 1700s. If a passerby didn't know any better, they'd think he was probably in his early 20s. They'd be wrong. The reality was, Storm had just turned 15 2 months prior. He had been left on his own since the deaths of his grandparents and great-grandparents at age 5, and had a vague memory of a very large, old, beautiful house, gorgeous English formal gardens with wonderful trails and wildlife that abounded. In the local village of New Hope, there was a neat store that he'd spent days at, and an office where he had a cubbyhole at that smelt so familiar it was just out of reach. In the office, that's where I remember that he sat. He had long hair and incredible green eyes that showed joy and sparkle when he laughed. My guardian angel with real long blonde hair that I remember playing with when he worked, and one hell of a nasty left uppercut, and a ring on his right hand that held a bird in a red stone. Possibly a garnet, he thought. Yeah, It was a garnet. It was, he said it was his birthstone. That's January. Storm lived in and out of foster care and the care system of the state of New Jersey until he was 8 and was placed back with his screwed-up mother and stepfather in Newark for a short stint back in the system while she went through her divorce when he was about 10, and back to Kathy after her time in rehab, which didn't work. Storm shook his head. Well, man, I'm sorry, Will. She just couldn't get her act together for us. Drugs and that way of life. Sorry, you're a good man, and I miss you, Will. He lived that way for years, only to be dumped on his asshole drug-dealing father in a housing project in Philly 8 weeks earlier. Raphael, who lived with them, and Kathy, claimed as her husband, took off for parts unknown around Independence Day weekend. Storm had come home from his first week in his freshman year of high school to wave to his mother's shrink as she pulled out of the local convenience store less than a block from their apartment complex in Newark, New Jersey, only to enter the parking lot and found an ambulance with a police cruiser. That was no big deal. After all, it wasn't the greatest part of town. That was until he went to enter their building and found the cops blocking their doorway as the EMTs tried desperately to save his mother's life. That was, as one cop muttered, probably a John gone bad. Kathy Clark was pronounced dead at the scene of the crime from multiple stab wounds. Storm wasn't permitted to remove anything at the time due to it being an active homicide investigation. At the time, he shrugged. There wasn't much in the apartment that wasn't registered on the hot sheet anyway, as Kathy would sometimes turn tricks in exchange for the items instead of money. He knew there was supposed to be a contingency plan in place that was set up after her failed rehab stay, but for some reason he spent the night in a foster home with only the clothes on his back and his school books and backpack. 5 days later, and in the 4th foster home, he was escorted by a caseworker and 2 Newark police officers, including the one with the mouth, who then couldn't look Storm in the eye, to the apartment where he once lived with his mother and where she had been murdered. They'd taken him to the apartment to retrieve his belongings. When he asked about paperwork for the living arrangements his mother had set up, the caseworker simply shrugged. That number appears to have been changed. We can't reach them, was the simple response. Then he was told he was being placed with Reed at his request. When they got to the apartment, he thought, get my belongings. Yeah, right. There ain't gonna be anything left. And that's exactly what they came upon, if you could call what was left anything. When they arrived, the lock on the door was broken. The officers entered, then the caseworker, and finally he was allowed. Storm had looked about. He tried to tell them things were missing. His answer was another shrug. Get what you want, his caseworker told him. I gotta drop you off and get back up here. She looked around. After all, this is not the Ritz-Carlton of neighborhoods. What did you expect? Storm took his own inventory. The flat-screen TV, DVR, his Xbox 360 and games, the DVD player and movies, Kathy's tablet and Kindle that Will had gotten for her were gone from the coffee table where she always kept it. He opened the drawer in an end table to retrieve his great-grandmother's family Bible that contained an envelope with paperwork, photos, and a keepsake from Kathy's teenage years. In his room, his laptop that belonged to the school and his printer. His stereo and most of his CDs were a loss. Someone had gone shopping in the kitchen. All the non-perishables were cleaned out, and the place reeked of rotten food. The electric was turned off. Not by the cops. Once again, she, Kathy, hadn't paid the bill. That meant that the fridge was filled with maggots by the time they brought him to retrieve his things. Just thinking about the stench now created Storm's gag reflux. He had to stop and turn to take a drink from his canteen. He rinsed his mouth out because of the thought. It wasn't pleasant. When he finished, he walked on. That's when he first heard it, the rustle of ground cover and a twig or two snapping. Okay then, I got company. He shook his head. Man, did they ever do the shopping spree in that place. Any appliance which could be pawned or be traded for drugs were taken. Gone were the dishes, flatware, pots and pans. People had scavenged as the place lay non-secure after the closing of the crime scene and was left unguarded. A free-for-all of a looting had taken place, and these people didn't give a shit. Storm had asked himself, did he, himself, really give a shit about it? His mind told him, no. He found a spatula, a couple of large stirring spoons, and a ladle. As for cooking, no one wanted his great-great-grandmother's rusty cast-iron frying pans and 2 Dutch ovens with lids from the late 1800s, or thereabouts. His mother had brought them back from a trip to see her mother, Michelle, last winter. Neither Kathy or Raphael knew how to take care of them. Now he had those hanging from his backpack with S-hooks he purchased at the hardware store. He was dumped at his father's place late that afternoon, the building of the high-rise housing project in Center City, Philadelphia, where opioids were a way of life, as were the illegal drugs. The crime rate was higher than the IQ of most of the residents who lived there, and graduation from high school was less likely than a snowfall in Death Valley on Independence Day. As they entered the elevator for the trip to the 14th floor, he should have listened to his intuition that told him this was the beginning of the end. The door closed, the lift rattled, shuddered, then began to rise. At the third floor, the lights flickered and went out. His caseworker mumbled, "Shit." She moved closer to his 5'7" frame and clutched her purse to her chest. The next 4 floors were climbed in darkness. At what he figured was floor 8, it stuttered to a halt. The doors opened only part way, but they were left a foot above the floor, and there it had stopped. He had to struggle to open the door as the caseworker backed away in a panic. He now, on this day in November, far away from that day, had to laugh at his own boldness at the time when he stated, "Look, lady, I gotta live in this shit heap. You're only here until I get into the place. Don't pull this shit. Do your freaking job the state has paid you to do." He gotten the door open and climbed down, then helped her. a sign duct taped to the wall across from the lift read, "Elevators do not pass beyond floor 8. Take the stairway. Manicure and maintenance." As they entered the door, the stairwell walls, steps, and even the ceiling were covered in graffiti. The stench of urine and fecal matter filled the air. The place held broken bottles, beer cans, and discarded needles had littered the damaged step, where sections of the safety rails were missing. When they made floor 14, after stopping several times for her to get her breath, and entered the hallway, they were forced to step around a couple seating propped against each other with a wine bottle between them, who were both passed out cold and had pissed themselves. The caseworker knocked on door 1404, then knocked again. The third time, with no response, she growled, "I called him. Come on, Reed, you fucking said." She caught herself. "He said I should bring you here and pick up my..." "Never mind. It's getting late." "And pick up what?" he asked. She hadn't responded. Drugs, more than likely. Storm now thought that was probably it. The door across the hall opened. "Oh, hi. Reed's not home. He's, yeah, went out to, groceries. Yeah, groceries. I'm Star. I have his key." The pretty Afro-American woman stepped from the apartment to lock her own door, then crossed the hall to open 1404. "I know you, right?" "Yeah, I do. You're Robin Rubio, or what used to be." "No, you're wrong. No idea who that is," his caseworker stated. "Yeah, sure, right. Okay." Star had looked at Storm and rolled her eyes as if to say, "She's full of it." When they entered, she turned to look Storm up one side and down the other. "You're Stormy, right?" "Yes, ma'am." She giggled. "That's what I call my Meemaw. Your room's through there." She pointed to a door behind her. "I fixed it up as best I could with what Reed had here." She winked, but still shrugged. "Reed should be home soon. Here's the key. You need anything, let me know." She turned and left. The caseworker didn't say anything. She threw up her hands and walked out. Storm looked at the closed door as she slammed it behind her. This told him more than he already suspected. 3 chains, 2 deadbolts, which locked with a key he didn't have, and a lock you would see on a motel door. He shuffled over and threw that lock, then put the chains on. He tottered to his bedroom to open the door and turned on the light, now that it was after dark. The bare bulb came on overhead. The dresser looked like Star got it out of a dumpster. A five drawer with 2 of them missing, and a bookshelf that leaned to one side, propped up with a cinder block. What little he had, he put away and started into the kitchen to get something to eat. Star's attempt to fix him a decent room was not what he would have called decent. Well, the lady had tried. He smiled to himself as he thought about her and Iceberg's other ladies that helped him. It consisted of a mattress on the floor he hoped didn't have bedbugs. It at least smelt of clean sheets and pillowcases, with a worn bedspread and a homeless shelter's supplied blanket still in the plastic bag. From the looks of the living room area and the kitchen, Reed wasn't doing too hot, but somehow he always had new wheels, and they were always expensive ones. The sofa was an older sleeper with an end table and a single lamp. A broken recliner propped up by a plastic milk crate. The desktop held up by 2 stacks of cinder blocks, was turned into the stand for a 25-inch Sony Trinitron tabletop that had seen better days. The kitchen held 2 mismatched chairs on either side of a tabletop that was nailed to what looked like the remains of 2 TV tray stands that didn't even look level. Storm shook his head as he now hiked. Oh, the joys of having an old man like Reed Carlson. Granted, that day, Starr and said his father had gone for groceries. True. But there were no pots, pans, dishes, cups, not even a can opener, and the refrigerator door was held shut by a pile of bricks. Within hours, Storm had found out why. This was not where Reed Harlow Carlson ever lived. This was a hold-up for business, and a legal one. Storm had turned his first trick for Reed that night. Yeah, he wasn't worth much to the man, with his club feet, spina bifida, and deformed hips. That affected his balance, which caused him to walk with his toes turned in and his feet at an angle with the use of special orthopedic shoes and braces. This caused the shuffling gait and toddles of his movements and drove Reed mad with anger and caused multiple issues throughout the building. This was because Storm had misjudged several residents in that building. They were showing kindness and cared about the crippled kid in 1404, so this had them make several calls to CPS and the police for welfare checks and caused them to get into Reed's affairs. Storm didn't last a month, especially after he found out about the dogfighting ring and cockfights that were held in the basement. Chapter 2. Storm shook his head. How damn stupid could I have been? I should have known better after the first night with those two. Even putting a lock on his bedroom door didn't deter the situation. He found a stocking job at the Marco Club on Delaware Avenue. It wasn't much, but it was cash flow. He was out of the apartment by 7 o'clock in the morning, missing Reed and staying out until the last bus ride home, not returning again until after 2 the following morning. He'd taken a cold shower because there was never any hot water, and catch some shut-eye to wake and be gone the next morning. Transportation was the bus service. A good setup. Meals were at the street vendors. It was easy to avoid Reed, but not so with some of his clients. On several occasions, he missed work because Reed set him up for a client, like Kathy had started to do when he had his 13th birthday. The third Sunday morning of September 17th, he wanted to just forget about the whole day. Storm shuddered as he came along River Road, thinking about the nightmare. His left hand instinctively cupped his right elbow, where he had phantom pains that climbed his arm to his shoulder and down his forearm to his wrist. There's still something wrong with that. He'd have to stop soon and find a place to set up camp, as he only made 2 to 4 miles in a day's hike. This was caused by his misshapen feet. As he looked up through the dark mahogany dreadlocks that surrounded his head, he could see the clouds starting to gather. There would be rain again tonight. Now's a good time as ever, he admitted to himself. Storm turned east from the road to start into the wooded area towards the Delaware River. Less than 1,000 yards from River Road, he could hear its easy flow. He cocked his head to one side. He thought he heard the approach, then the slowing, and finally the vehicle came to a stop, and he heard the purr of a sports car. Then someone called out, "Storm! Are you out here?" Who the fuck? He shrugged and went closer to the river. Gotta be someone Reed hired. Who the hell else would it be? There was a soft thump. The engine revved and the car was gone. Another 35 yards and he could see the river's bank and the rivulets of water around the rocks and the trees on the New Jersey bank as they descended the side of the towpath where he'd been traveling. Storm set his duffel down and struggled to remove his pack. The first thing to do was his tent. Thinking back, he found this and his sleeping bag abandoned in a broken cart at McPherson Square in the Kensington section of Philly. The first night he was away from the project, and that park was not a good place to be. Neither was K&A. It was Zombieland. That was where families came to see if they could find family members that had been lost to the world of drugs. Yeah, Zombieland. He shook his head. Iceberg had warned him. The sleeping bag had a tear he'd been able to sew after he washed it at a laundry on Allegheny Avenue because he didn't want to get the crud in the man's washing machine. And he'd fixed the broken tent pole with 2 popsicle sticks and duct tape. Storm sighed as he pitched the tent, set up his sleeping bag, and stowed his pack and duffel. He cleared an area of leaves and set a perimeter of rocks, then laid small twigs on the mound of leaves and found a couple of small logs for the evening. He wouldn't light the fire unless he got very cold, but it was prepped for the night of November 14th. Ready for dinner, he opened a can of pasta in tomato sauce and began to eat. Chapter 3. Storm relaxed at the small fire he built as he drank a hot cup of coffee. He really wondered if he had actually heard someone call his name before he started to drift further into the wooded area for the river. Not a clue who would be looking for me out here. But why was I given these letters and sent out this way? Yeah, hell yeah, I needed to get away from Reed. That was for sure. But am I going to be to the good or even worse when I make it to this so-called home I'm looking for? He drank his coffee. Everything's got to be better than what I left on that Saturday morning. He looked into the fire. Shit, that was the pits. I hope the ladies are doing well, and Iceberg too. Another sip of coffee, and he was going to bed and saying his nightly prayers for Ukraine and, as always, for Israel. He had learned that from his grandparents. He finished his last sip and tamped the fire to climb into his tent and curl in his sleeping bag. His prayers said, he drifted off, only to have that nasty dream of the morning he left the apartment and the flight to safety. Jesus Christ! This is not going to be a good night. Storm bolted upright to grab his right elbow and rocked to relieve the stress as he tried to let loose of the thoughts of the third Sunday of September as it started Storm Dokkan's new life on his own. Storm had been 15 years and 2 days old when he walked into floor 14 for apartment 1404, 2 hours early at the quarter after midnight from his shift at Mako Club on September 17th. It had turned into a slow night with the rain and the end of the summer, and folks were worried about the tropical storm, so he was given his cash payment and sent on his way. Think of it as a belated birthday present and gift, kid, Sal had said, and sent him out the door with a wave of his hand and a bag of things the other employees had purchased for him, with cards and a slice of cake. Storm had arrived at the apartment to hear Reed's booming, pissed-off voice screaming at someone about missing funds. This was followed by the sound of multiple children crying. He shook his head and started to walk away. Money, drugs, prostitution, booze, gambling, and extortion. He's got his fingers into it all, and the sick bastard is another Michael Vick. With the dog and cockfighting, he runs out of the basement here. Somebody is greasing the wheels one way or another. And me? I got delivered into the fucker's deviant hands. Where's my guardian angel at now when I fucking need him? It was all running through his head like someone was cranking an old movie projector, and Storm was being forced to watch it on the big screen. He wanted nothing to do with it and didn't want to know what else Reed was into, but he'd heard some nasty shit. As a matter of fact, he was planning on having breakfast out, picking up a Philly Inquirer, and looking into roommates or rooms to rent. He'd already talked to Sal at work, and there were a few options for him from a couple of the guys he worked with. As he walked to the end of the hall on that early morning, he heard the cursing and then the crash. What he had in that place wasn't worth him trying to save. After all, he had his cash in his wallet, but the family Bible. Oh well. Before he could pull the stairwell door open, the apartment door was blown apart, with a man's body being catapulted through it by the blast of a shotgun, and the body landed in the hall, thrashed, and became motionless. Then, as all hell was breaking loose, a crazy pregnant blonde broad hurdled the guy who she just blown out of his shoes, literally, by the use of a sawed-off shotgun with a hand grip that she still had. She ran towards him as she fled and screamed, "Come on, you little bastards!" Storm froze, too scared to move. She bolted past him, grabbed the stairwell door, and was gone. The next thing he knew, he was dragged into the place by Reed as he tripped over the body and was thrown off his feet into a wall as something gave way in his shoulder. Then he was slammed to the floor. Reed screamed at him, "You don't tell nobody nothing!" The pain occurred in an instant. It was so fast, he still didn't know what happened. Tonight, it was almost 2 months later, as he sat in his sleeping bag and looked back on the memory. The only thing that came to him was the overwhelming pain and him swimming in blackness and the sound of small children screaming as one of Reed's associates rushed in to yell at them, Shut the fuck up and let's go. Then he could hear the footfalls as they herded the kids out. Yes, in the prior weeks, Reed had hit him. He'd been on the receiving end of a black eye and bloodied nose. He had been sold for sex, and Reed had forced him to have sex with him, his own father. Storm had lingering welts and bruises that were fading. Several of the cuts that he bore were still healing. Along with the cuts were the abrasions that he received from his old man. His lip had been split, and he had a forever scar that cut through the right eyebrow where he wore a piercing. For several prior days before the Sunday morning, he had to answer inquiries about darkness which colored his pale green eyes and chiseled jaw, as his light brown peach fuzz whiskers had just started to appear. The only thing he remembered about the aftermath of that morning was the tug on his jacket and the gentle voices of Star and Brown Sugar that brought him back to them as he swirled through the pain on that Sunday. As he laid back in his sleeping bag, the memory was in his wheelhouse. You gotta get out of here, baby boy. Star helped him to sit up. He's a crazy man, and that broad is going to get them children killed. They strung out on his own shit. He put a gun to my head, and she done threatened Iceberg with that shotgun of hers. No one dares to does that who's in their right mind and do that to Iceberg. Brown Sugar called from the room as she shoved things into his backpack. Star helped him up. Storm grabbed his arm and groaned. That fucker done broke this baby's arm. Twinkle started for the door to act as lookout. The older woman of Latino descent had gold speckles through her woven blonde braids. Star got him to the recliner to sit. That was when he saw Roxy in the kitchen, putting his canned goods into reusable grocery bags and packing up his cooking items. She also had his bag of cards, cake, and gifts. Brown Sugar came from the room with his backpack and the blanket. All packed. Roxy? Ready. She held her phone out so that they could hear. Ice, he's packed. I'm watching this bastard doing the hokey pokey with the man. Y'all hits them stairs when my twink gives you the single. Don't be wasting no time on that damn lift. Someone's reported that body they done dumped in an abandoned place, and they know him's an associate this ass. Moves it. Roxy stuffed her phone into her skirt pocket. Storm, we taken them stairs, all of them. Iceberg's waiting at the back door. You is out of here. Twinkle yelled, Go, go, go! Storm still didn't remember the flight from that place in hell. He did remember hitting the back seat of a decked-out vintage Lincoln Town Car Pimpmobile with a diamond chip in the back window, a bobblehead dog on the rear deck, pom-pommed fringe, and a set of fuzzy dice hung from the rearview mirror that rotated. The car was red with white Landau roof and had a sunroof. Iceberg leaned out the window, and in a smooth, deep voice that sounded like Cindy Portier in Lilies of the Field, he stated, My ladies, you lay low. Listen to the mama there. I makes my calls, and you and I'd be setting it up. Then everything blurred. In our next portion of the stories, we will enter Chapter 4, again on Storm's walk, for him to try to find a home. I wish you all a well night. I hope you enjoyed this. From myself and the mouse, the noises you heard in the background is our two large dogs, Sean Thornton, who is a giant schnauzer, and Prince Romeo, who is a giant Russian black terrier. Mouse has two little brothers and sisters who are Chihuahua puppies named Maggie and Chuck, and she has a whole posse full of kitties, cats, and kittens that we rescue. And you may see one or two of them show up and walk behind me. Have a blessed night, and we will see you next time.